Good morning. It is such an honor to be here with you this morning because it's in those seats, in this place, during this month of February 20 years ago that I walked down this aisle and I stood right here and I gave my heart to Jesus Christ, being a Lee student. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, born and raised there, came from a great family, great parents, but at 12 years old, I was struggling with identity. Being a Mexican American, but not looking Hispanic, I went into my middle school looking very different than the rest of the Mexican Americans there. I had light skin, light hair, this is dyed, green eyes, and I didn't fit in. And so I was bullied, and I was robbed, and I was assaulted, I was jumped, I was experienced all of these very difficult things at a young age. And so because I went through this for an entire year, because of the students in my school that were Mexican American but were gang members and had parents that were 24 years old and gang members and grandparents that were 36 that were gang members, I didn't feel safe to tell somebody. So I never said anything, continued living my life, and then made the decision very shortly later to get jumped into a gang and to not allow this to happen to me anymore, but to do the same havoc, wreak the same havoc that was done to me to somebody else. And I lived that life for 7 years, from 12 to 19. I made choices that affected my life, that affected other people's lives, that affected my family's lives. Everything that came along with that gang initiation, criminal activity, drugs, alcohol, sex. At 16, I found myself pregnant. It seemed like a good idea at the time, until I actually had my son, Josh, who was born on February 25th of 1994. And for 7 days, I took the responsibility of becoming a mother. But after the 7 days were over, it was boring. So I left my son in the care of my parents. I went back to school. I went back to the parties. I went back to smoking dope and drinking alcohol and partying, coming home super late at night. But every night, my parents were faithful in staying up, praying for me, asking the Lord to protect me and keep me safe, because He had a plan for me from before I was born. One particular night, I came home, it was probably 4 a.m, and my mom, just as like she always did, was sitting on the couch with her Bible open. She asked me to come in so she could speak to me. And I went in there and she handed me this note. And I don't remember all the words on the paper, but I do remember a sentence that was in bold writing that said, "The umbilical cord is now cut." And I said, "What is this supposed to mean?" And she said, "You can't stay here anymore. I can't continue going on like this." And I said, "Well, are you gonna kick me out on the street with my son?" You know, I didn't want that. I didn't like that idea because I wasn't gonna be able to do whatever I wanted to with my money and have a live-in babysitter. So she said, "I don't know, but this is not the place where you can be anymore." So I figured if I behaved, if I came in a little bit earlier, if I started doing the things that I was supposed to do, then maybe she would forget about it, because surely she wouldn't kick me out on the streets. And about 2 weeks later, I walked in the house, and she had 2 big suitcases by the door. I said, "Mom, what is this?" She said, "I told you you're moving." I said, "Where am I going?" She said, "Cleveland, Tennessee." And I said, "What the heck is that?" And she said, "It's the state on the other side. It's where Lee College is, where me and your dad went in the 60s, where we met. That's where you're going." I was like, "I don't want to go there." I mean, I didn't know if this place had like dirt roads, people like rode horses to work, chewed on hay. Like I was from Los Angeles, that's where I wanted to stay. I didn't want to come here. So I went to the store, I called my boyfriend, I said, "Hey, my mom's making me move to Tennessee." And of course he's like, "What the heck is that?" Nobody knew, nobody knows what Tennessee is. And I was like, "Can me and Josh live with you till we get on our feet?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Well, it was perfect because the suitcase was already packed, and all I had to do was just take him out to the car. So I go out back to the house, and I wait 10 minutes, and 15, and 20, and 25 minutes, and he never came. So my parents took my stuff, and they put it in the back of the car and drove me to the LAX airport. And I was so angry that day. I got my little boy, Josh, he was 2 years old at the time. I grabbed him. I wasn't even gonna turn around and say goodbye to my parents because they were gonna pay for what they were making me do. I flew 4.5 hours to Atlanta, Georgia, where someone from Lee College picked me up and brought me to this place. I knew nobody from here that was my same age. I didn't know how I was going to be accepted, so I wasn't going to be punked around here. So I looked like a gang member, I walked like a gang member, I talked like one, and I was going to be tough, and I was going to be respected on this campus. So I go to the administration building, and all these girls come up to me and say, "Hi, welcome to Lee College." And I'm like, "Why are you in my face? Why are you in my face? Back up." I mean, I was tough. Like, I didn't want anyone messing with me. I wanted to establish who I was here. And so I would walk down Ocoee Street going back to my apartment, and people would wave at me, and I would like, I don't know these people. What's wrong with these people? Southern hospitality at its finest. The love that I got from people here was amazing. It didn't matter what I looked like, how I talked, how I dressed, what my makeup looked like. People loved me, and girls would come up to me. I would take Josh, my little boy, to class, and I would sit him on a little blanket, and he would have some snacks and toys every day. Dr. Simmons' class, Mrs. Brownlee, all these different people. I was going to class. I was taking Josh there, and so a couple girls came up to me, and they said, "Hey, we'll watch your son for you." And I'm like, "Okay." They're like, "Okay, so just come in Alumni Park, and we'll be there." I was like, "All right." And I did that, and there was Josh playing ball with the girls. And so one day I came out, and I didn't see Josh anywhere. I didn't see the girls anywhere. So I went to the Ped Mall, and there were some people sitting at the table, and I said, "Have you guys seen a little Mexican boy?" And they're like, "Josh?" I'm like, "Yeah, Josh." "Oh, he's in the rec center with the basketball team." So I go to the rec center. They're like, he's like dunking basketballs in the baskets. And I mean, I tell you that because everyone just loved on us. Just me and Josh, we came as a package. And I felt this love. And I remember someone coming up to me and saying, "Hey, do you sing? Do you like music?" I was like, "Yeah, I like music." They're like, "Well, let's try it. You want to try out for EVS?" And I'm like, "What is that?" They're like, "Oh, it's a choir." I'm like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "Well, what do I have to do?" They're like, "You just have to sing a Christian song, like to audition." And I'm like, "I don't know any Christian songs. I think I sing like Man in the Mirror or like Beat It or something. I don't know." Anyways, I made it. It was like super cool. And I wasn't like living for God at that time, but we were singing about all these things about freedom and all this stuff. And it was finally one chapel during February, 20 years ago, this month, that I was sitting up in the balcony. And there was a man standing up on this stage, and he's like, "Aren't you tired of running from God?" And that, like literally just grabbed my attention. And I knew from a young age who God was and what he did for us. And I saw my mom praying and fasting and all these things, but I never had a relationship with him. I didn't want one. And so when he said that, it grabbed me in such a way that I was like, man, all these people are loving me. They're doing all these things for me. You know, there's a God that cares about me. And obviously it's showing through these people. So I took my 2-year-old, and there was an usher there, and I was like, "Here, hold him." And I ran down the stairs, down this aisle, right here, where I lifted my hands, and I said, "I don't even know why you love me, because I'm so filthy. And I've hurt so many people, and I've hurt my parents, and I don't know what you want from me, but whatever it is, I'm here." I am not joking. Chains began to drop from my life. And my hair came down a few inches, and my makeup got a little bit nicer, and I started incorporating red and pink in my wardrobe, which I never had that. And like things just started changing, like even the way I talked, I wasn't cussing, and I really had this desire to read God's word. It was really weird because it always been super boring to me, but I like wanted to read his word and to know who he was for myself, not through my parents. And things were going great until one Sunday morning I woke up and I threw up. And I don't throw up except when I'm pregnant. And I panicked. So I immediately sucked my stomach in, and I felt on the left side of my stomach a ball that felt like my fist. And I knew right then I was pregnant. I knew it. So this had followed me from California. I was in my 2nd month in Cleveland, Tennessee. Everything was going great, just rededicating my life to Christ. Things were looking up, and I'm pregnant. And I started to blame him. I'm like, why would you let me be pregnant? You knew I was gonna come back to you. Why would you allow this? And so I grabbed the phone book and I look under abortion. You know, in California, there's abortion clinics everywhere. And so I look under abortion and I see, yes, there's one abortion clinic in Cleveland, New Hope Pregnancy Crisis Center. So I call and I make an appointment. And I walk in, and the lady gives me the paperwork, and I'm filling all this stuff out. And right before she calls me to the back, I see a Bible under a chair. I go and do my urine test. I go in this little room with a couch and a TV and a DVD player, a lamp. And I said, is this a Christian place? And she said, yes. We're a resource center to help women in crisis pregnancies. And I said, why are you in the phone book under abortion? And she said, no, it says post-abortion counseling. Well, this is my first semester at Lee. I was like second month. I didn't know what post meant. You know, I was like, how was I supposed to know? I mean, I'm from California. Like, did good just to graduate from high school. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I said, look, lady, I don't have time for this. You don't have time, I'm sure. You've got lots of things you need to do. I can't have this baby. Okay, so see you later? And she's like, wait a second. There's options. I said, no, there's not options. And she tried to convince me that I needed to keep this child. And I'm like, I cannot keep this child. I said, I'm a teenager. I have a 2-year-old son. I'm 2,000 miles away from home. I go to Lee College. I mean, if they find out I'm pregnant and single, like, I'll probably have to leave. I cannot have this baby. And she said, okay, will you watch a video for me? And so she puts on this DVD and puts a box of Kleenexes there, and this video begins to play, and it says, it all began with a swirl of blood. And literally for the next 22 minutes, I watched something horrific. I watched a baby in a womb, in the fluid. I watched a needle come through the top and some solution being injected in the womb. And I saw the baby as it was moving around, and I saw the baby begin to swallow this foreign substance. And I saw this baby convulse and literally shake. I mean, I was literally watching this baby suffocate and be poisoned by salt. And then I watched a partial birth abortion where a sharp object was inserted in the back of the head, and a vacuum sucked out the brains. And then I watched another procedure where the abortionist puts in this vacuum, and at the very end is a sharp object, and when it goes in, it literally dismembers this baby and then sucks parts of the body into this vacuum and then puts it on this tray. When I saw that, I knew, I can't do that. I cannot do that. And so I felt way more hopeless and helpless leaving that place than I did. Because when I went in there, there was an option, there was a choice, like I was not gonna have this baby. But then when I walked out, I didn't have that choice anymore. And so I went to my house, and I remember crying and crying, thinking, what am I gonna do? It was shortly after that one day we came home from classes, Josh and I went into my apartment. I had a bag of popcorn and about that much milk. I popped the popcorn for Josh. He ate it. He drank the milk. I put him in bed. I was pregnant. I had no idea how far along I was. I was hungry, and I thought, what am I going to feed my son when he wakes up in the morning? And the morning came very quickly. And I got Josh up, and I thought, okay, I had this plan. If I take him to the park and we play and we do all these things and I distract him from being hungry, then he won't ask me for food. And so I put him up on the toilet, and I brushed his teeth, and I washed his face and combed his hair, and I zipped up his little gray sweatshirt. And I'm saying, Josh, we're gonna go to the park. We're gonna have so much fun. We're gonna play on the swings. Then we're gonna kick the ball. Then we're gonna run around. And I'm just talking 100 miles an hour saying, please don't ask me for food. Please don't tell me you're hungry. And we walked across the living room floor, and I opened up the front door, and there were 6 bags full of groceries in front of my door. I never told a soul that I didn't have food. And I looked at the food, and Josh said, Mom, park. And I said, no, eggs. So I got the food, and I made it real quick, and I fed Josh, and we went and played. And I thought to myself, how in the world am I gonna have a baby when I can't even feed myself or my son? How is this gonna work? March came, spring break. EVS was going to Washington and Maryland, and I was 135 pounds. No one knew my secret. I mean, nobody knew. And we went to this church in Maryland, And we were singing a song, and I felt compelled to go to the altar, and I was wearing my choir robe. And I knelt down, and I was like, God, how am I going to get through this? How are you going to work this out? I felt a hand on me. And just to be nice, I got up, and I told the lady, thank you for praying for me. And she looks at me, and she goes, the Lord spoke to me and told me that you're pregnant. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing telling people I'm pregnant? Like, I was mad. I was like, oh, I cannot believe he said this. I'm like, okay. And she's like, listen, if you trust him, he will provide everything that you need. And this lady, this was a divine appointment. Divine. Because when I came back to Cleveland, this lady calls me and says, Evie, you need to go to the doctor. I said, I don't have money. She's like, you need to go to Starview Drive. At this place is Department of Human Services. You need to apply for TennCare. You need to apply for food stamps. I'm like, what is food stamps? Oh, it's this coupon book, this play money. You go and you buy whatever you want, and then you just rip it out and give it to them. I'm like, who knew? Like, seriously? So I go to this place, I go to the doctor, and the doctor tells me in July. And then this is almost April, and in 3 months, you're gonna have a child. And so I never told anyone. I continued going, and my stomach wasn't growing. I was wearing my same clothes, and I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, it's just the position of the baby. The baby's healthy, fine. I mean, my parents came in April to visit me. They had no idea I was pregnant. May comes, and I was just like, I've got to hide this from people. So the lady calls me and says, hey, have you ever considered adoption? I was like, no way. There's no way I could do that. And she's like, you need to consider that. She said, I know a pastor in another state. There's a family that's in his congregation that's looking to adopt a child. So consider that. Long story short, I made the decision to place my son for adoption. May came, we did our finals, and everyone left. And as soon as this place is a ghost town, my stomach popped out. And that was it. 3 weeks before I had my son, I wrote my parents a letter, and just like always, they forgive me. They told me they were proud of me and that they were sorry that I had to go through this by myself. My sister flew from California to Tennessee so that she could be with me while I had my son. I went into Bradley Healthcare, and on July 31st of 1996, I birthed a beautiful, black-headed, dark-skinned, dark-eyed baby boy. And they put him on my chest, and I loved him, and I looked at him, and he was beautiful. Later on that night, I was so tired, and the nurse said, hey, honey, we're going to take him from you so that you can get some rest. And I was like, no way. I was like, because I don't ever know if I'll get to see him again. So for the next 8 hours, I hugged my son. I kissed him. I prayed over him. I asked him to forgive me. So I made a very impactful choice that I thought would only satisfy me at the time, but in the end, hurt so many people. So that was a very difficult time. It was a time that I cherish. And 5:30, the parents were supposed to come and pick him up when I looked at that clock on the back wall, and it said 5 p.m. I began to go through trauma. Like, my body hurt. I had pain in my fingertips all the way down to my toes. I felt like there were bricks on my chest. I couldn't breathe. And I was like, how am I going to get through this? Like, this isn't even humanly possible for me to have a child and to give him to somebody else. So I closed my eyes and I said, God, if there is ever a time that I needed you, it's right now. I need peace because I can't do this, but this is what I'm supposed to do. And I mean, I'm not joking. It was within minutes that I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit in that room, and light, like it was warm water just flowing over my head to the tops of my feet, to my fingers, all the way through my body. And I knew that God's peace that was the only thing that brought me through that. And at 5:30, they rolled me out, and I put my son into the car, and I watched as they drove off. And I came back to lead 2 weeks later, and my friends were like, how was your summer? And I was like, how was yours? And it was difficult, and I cried a lot, and I still do. I went ahead and went head first in my studies at Lee and finished here and graduated. And the day after I graduated from Lee, I became a police officer. I mean, it's so weird, I know. I don't even know how this whole thing happened, only by the grace of God, because he has a purpose and a plan for my life. My son, Josh, is currently a student at Lee. He's 22 years old today. My son, Joel, is 19. He graduated from high school last year, made a 35 on his ACT, and got a full ride to a university in Ohio. I would love to see him, to be a part of his life. But I don't know if that's going to happen. It was a choice that I made in California that followed me to Tennessee. And this is how much God cared about me, because if I found out that I was pregnant in California, the guy, I didn't even love him. He was a gang member. I probably would have been like, I know you don't love me. I know you don't love me. I don't love you either, but we probably need to get married because I can't have a kid by myself, another one. Who knows what would have happened to Josh? Who knows what would have happened to Joel? Who knows what would have happened to me? But God cares about me so much that he's like, I've got to get this girl from California to Tennessee. And she's not gonna wanna go because she's too cool for Tennessee, but I've got to move her there. And it was this place and the students in these chairs that loved me unconditionally, that showed me love, that God used to pour into me and say, look, I don't want anything from you, but I care about you because you're God's creation. And it was the man that was used by God to stand up here and to share his heart and speak the words that said, aren't you tired of running from God, to bring me down this place to submit my life to him. Am I perfect? No. Have I made mistakes? Tons. But I want to do what God wants of me. I want to do that. And so God has a way of restoring everything that the locusts have eaten, of redeeming, of forgiving, even when we don't feel like we're worth it. Psalm 139 says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. It is not easy to come up here and talk to you about this. It's not easy to kind of be transparent and to air all my dirty laundry to everybody. But 6 years ago, God said, if you can share your story, which is actually mine, and lives can change from that, and who cares what people think of you? Because ultimately, it's about me. That's what he says. So, the band is going to come and play. And I want you to take some time today. I mean, I would love nothing more for someone to leave here. And I'm not really going to settle on one person. I would like more than one person to leave here contemplating, thinking about where you're at. Have you surrendered? Have you decided to shave off the things that you want to do what he wants? And if you're not there, and if you don't know if that's the choice that you make, I'm telling you that it's so much easier when someone else directs your life. So today you have a choice. And I'm asking you to choose freedom. Thank you.